All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. To my regular listeners, here we go again. You know how I get down. You know what we do here. We bring you nothing but the best. We bring you people that have a story, that have a passion, an ambition, a goal, and things about them that are just, they've been sent here specifically to help other people. Their story, their career, everything they're all about is all about helping people. And today I have Mr. Chris Hood, who is, man, has worked with companies that include Google, include Disney, and so many different things. That, I mean, the two-time author has really revolutionized the way we think about customer interaction and helping customers and things of that nature. But Chris, it all started. I believe I read you were selling popcorn at a movie theater or something. And so, welcome to the show, and talk a little bit about your background and a little bit about how you got started, man.
Yeah, I started working at a movie theater. So a
Yeah,
long time ago when we actually went to movie theaters.
yes,
Now
back in those days.
it's a dying thing that we do. But yeah, I started working at a movie theater. And of course, I was taught back then the customer is always right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been interesting because throughout my career, I kind of stuck with that premise. But over, say the last 10, 15 years, as we have really taken advantage of digital technologies and social media and how the world has kind of evolved from how we engage with each other, you started to really question that concept of, is the customer always right? But yeah, it started with this concept of an experience. You go to the movies to escape from our lives and go, explore some fantasy world or some made up story. And the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, the lights dimming, the popcorn, all of it is, something that we really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that kind of to the next level as I started looking at storytelling and branding and marketing and
Mm-hmm.
how do we engage with people and our customers all throughout my entire career.
So you have a term. Now, I'm not sure if you've actually coined it or you're the first to say it, but you're definitely the first person that I've actually heard use the term customer transformation. And I'm glad you started there because when you're young, you don't really know how the world's going to turn out. You don't know if Wi-Fi is going to be a thing. You don't know if these things, social media and all that kind of stuff. You have to kind of have an inquisitive mind. You have to be very curious about just how things are going to be. So kind of speak to us a little bit about, when you're in that place of selling popcorn and I mean, again, this was back when, like you said, back when people actually went to the movie theaters. How did you see things kind of expanding? How did you see it, when I guess you didn't go the normal route and going to college, going to school. What was life like for you when you're kind of in this place where you're onto something big, but you're not sure it's going to actually, that people are actually going to care about it?
Yeah, it's a great way of starting this conversation.
Yes.
When I was younger, I had the choice. Do I go to school or do I start working? I enjoyed working. It was money, but I also wanted to go to school and learn. The problem was I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, right?
Yeah.
And I was presented with two options. You could either get into computers or you can follow your passion, which at the time was working at movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was presented like, do you want to get a degree in computers or do you want to get a degree in movies? And I did what we all do. We kind of sit there and try to predict what the future is going to hold. And clearly at that time, I figured the most profitable route was going into the movies
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because back then there wasn't a lot of things around technology. Technology was a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Technology was something that I did on the side for fun. I played video games. And when you look back now and you see how technology has evolved,
Yeah.
it is eye-opening, right? But to your point, we don't know. We can't predict what the future holds
Mm-hmm.
or what technological changes are going to happen. What we do know, which is never going to change because it hasn't changed, is that there will always be a customer.
Yes.
You are the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and what you are selling has to solve a problem for your customer. And
Right.
that is the basics. That is never going to change, no matter what the technology solution is, no matter what the business model is, no matter where we are in the future, you aren't going to sell to an imaginary being. You're not selling to an artificial intelligence. You are selling to a consumer where they have a problem and you are solving that problem. And so if you look at it in that context, always, and you start with what problem am I solving and what is then the product that I want to leverage to solve that problem,
Yes.
then it really doesn't matter the technology or the format or the channel or how you market it or anything else, because that is the starting point for all businesses.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that because one of my favorite authors actually is Seth Godin, and he wrote a book titled "All Great Marketers Are Liars," and then he has a line through it. It says storytellers, and one of the things that is also going to remain consistent when it comes to selling is being able to tell people a story, tell your customers, your clients, your shareholders, wherever it is you want to, whoever you look at as a customer, you got to be able to sell a story. And you were able, I believe I read this in your bio, that you developed a passion, or you were dealing with companies, whether it was your time at Disney or Google. Kind of speak on a little bit in terms of how the power of storytelling was sort of helping you move along the industry and kind of find your place, find your customers, and things of that nature.
Well, we all love stories. I mean, stories go back to the dawn of man, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's movies. If you think about it, going back to my time at a movie theater, the reason I enjoyed it so much was because I loved going and sitting and watching movies, which are stories.
Right.
Those stories are what brings us inspiration. Those stories are what evolve and communicate the problems that we have. So when I sit there and I talk to you and I tell you about, hey, this time when I was younger and I was delivering papers and I wanted to come up with a better way to deliver papers, right? You're engaged because you're interested in what my story is. And so sales, we could argue because there's a lot of argument around this that marketing is just fancy ways of telling stories. It's also ways of trying to place you into the role of who I want. This is why the typical way that we sell cars is, oh, you really want to, can you imagine yourself driving down the freeway with the, with the open and convertible red and, streaming down the 5 to the beach, like all of that imaginary stuff that we put in is part of that storytelling, because we're attempting to put you into that scenario, which makes you then be interested in buying whatever it is. But a lot of times that's also fictitious. We're trying to make believe, we're trying to create these stories to entice you. I mean, all advertising online, like if you look at a Taco Bell commercial, it's, satisfying your hunger. And wouldn't you rather be any place other than Taco Bell right now? Right.
Yeah.
Like those are the basic primal motivations that we have that we can wrap stories around. But I think stories can also be a lot more aspirational, right? We can start to think about what we want to achieve in our own lives and then leverage our past experiences, the past success and the past failures. Podcasting is all about telling stories about what we think and how we feel in order to help other people grow. And so those stories can be aligned in any number of different directions, just really, again, to help people build a better understanding or build a better awareness of what your business is and what you're trying to sell.
So as you're coming up and you're having this understanding, the companies that you are with, because I looked through your LinkedIn before we started recording, and they've been a lot. They've been a lot of companies. Did you ever, like, when did you get the push to start to push out your own content in your own books and have that drive? Because, I'm asking that because I'm wondering, as you're telling your story, there's bosses, there's people that want money, there's people that are looking at a young employee like you and say, look, yada, yada, that's a great story, but we need to get paid and you need to tell this. And, they kind of, you can kind of feel like you're not growing. You kind of feel like there's a talent in you, an ability in you that you're not able to explore. So what were some of those experiences like in which you kind of felt like, hey, I'm being muted before muted was actually a term. I'm being muted. I'm being in a situation where I'm not able to really fulfill my goal.
Yeah, there's a couple of themes in here.
Mhm,
One is as you are starting your career and you're younger and maybe at a junior level,
mhm,
those opportunities are going to be a lot harder, right? Because you're going to go into work, you're going to have an assignment, you're going to be expected to complete that assignment, and no one's really necessarily looking at you for your expertise or
mhm.
your thought leadership. As you get later in your
Yes.
career, like where I am, I got to a point where I just didn't care. Like, I'm going to tell you what I think,
And
and
but
you're
the thing
either
is,
going
I
to
gotta
like it
pause
or
you
you're
there
not going
because
to like it.
I gotta pause you there because I have a sports background, and I live in South Florida, so I've been a Miami Heat fan since before I got here. And all the stories are coming out about LeBron, about what he went through when he went to the Miami Heat and all that. And I heard one of his former coaches, they got asked, "Hey, what did LeBron learn when he got to Miami?" He goes, "You know, honestly, he learned to stop giving a fuck." He started
Yeah,
to stop giving a fuck when
that's
he
right.
got to Miami. And I
Yeah,
love that because, and again, for you listeners, you got to get to that place. It's a race, but you got to really know your stuff. You got to get to a point where got to stop giving a shit and just get it out of you, because no boss is just gonna get like push you. You got to stop caring to the point that it
yeah,
has to come out regardless. So anyway, go ahead.
yeah.
But by the way, that happens on this show, and when people start talking my language, I really get excited. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that totally is one aspect of it. Now, the other aspect of it, which you can do while you're still at a junior level,
Uh-huh.
is even if you don't feel like you can just express whatever is on your mind at your current job, you have to start taking advantages of those opportunities outside of your job. We talk about side hustles. Well,
Mm-hmm.
your side hustles should be anything you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if, as an example, writing a book, too
Mm-hmm.
often we have people who say, "Oh my gosh, I lost my job. What am I going to do? I'm trying to get another job. Oh, I think maybe I'll write a book while I'm applying for other jobs."
Mm-hmm.
Well, why didn't you write that book while you were still at your current job? Right?
Exactly.
That's a
Exactly.
motivational thing. And so, even if you're being told exactly what you need to be doing at your job,
Mhm.
no one's telling you exactly what you need to be doing when you're not at your job.
Thank
And
you.
so, take that extra motivation, start those side hustles,
Mm-hmm.
or just start exploring what you are passionate in
Yeah.
and be able to juggle a lot of different things,
Yeah.
because then you are being satisfied. And the reality is we have no idea what tomorrow brings.
All
We
right.
can be disrupted at any time. And you are putting all of your talent and energy and passion into a job. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you walk in tomorrow and you're fired.
Yes.
There is layoffs.
Yeah.
And then you go home and you're just sitting there saying, "Well, that was my dream job. I did everything I could for that company. And why me?" And well, imagine if you had been writing a book and you had something to fall back on.
Yeah.
Now you get fired from a job that you're really passionate about. Your
Mm-hmm.
response is, "Oh, well, on to the next thing," because you already have that next thing going.
Yeah.
And too many people get really comfortable and settled into their daily jobs
Mm-hmm.
and just do what they are asked to do on a daily basis
Mm-hmm.
and don't take that initiative to go do something else. And if you could do anything, that would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, and I want to actually take that step a little further, because if you are passionate about this dream job, if you do want to see it succeed, you're going to go out and do things that are going to be beneficial to that job description. You're going to go out and make things happen. That product, and I'll give you a like in my own life, this latest book that I wrote is called Transferring D1, because I teach at a school. It's a brand new startup school, and I know how NIL works. I know NIL and the transfer portal and how that is, kind of ripping our college system. So I'm like, look, I'm a former college athlete, coach, scout, the whole thing. Let me write this book that has nothing to do with the school that I teach at. But when the time comes, I know the students are going to like it. And if anything goes wrong, this is kind of a connection, a pipeline to the colleges that they want to connect with. And that's how you got to be thinking. I've heard it said on so many different occasions, the best time to go looking for a job is when you don't need one. You have to take that initiative, and you're gonna understand this point very well too, because you used to work at Disney. But imagine being at ESPN. Yeah, imagine, just last year what was going on in ESPN, and he's letting guys go left and right because everything went to streaming service, and the need for people just talking and debating on TV just was no longer a need. So that's a very important point as well. And I want to make sure I give you the platform and the opportunity to speak a little bit about the concepts in your book and the concept that you actually did coin, which is customer transformation. What exactly do you mean when you say that? Because I come from the kind of the old school saying that the customer is always right, and I've learned that that's not always the case. You got to kind of force feed them certain things to take them from customer to client to eventually maybe investor and regular consumer and things like that. So, just speak to us a little bit about what it means to create a customer transformation. And I want to kind of give you the opportunity to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, customer transformation is a 7-stage strategy for business alignment and business growth as it relates directly to your customer. And so we say the customer is always right. What we are really saying is that the majority of your customers are always right. And you have to recognize that. And that you as a business need to be able to transform on behalf of your customer. Too often we talk about things like, one of the big phrases in the last 5, 6, 7 years was digital transformation. And what digital transformation kind of alluded to was that we had to change our technology so that we can better serve our customers.
Yeah.
But the focus was on the technology, and too often businesses wanted to really hone in on, well, what's the technology I need to change and why am I changing this? All these technical terms.
Yeah.
The why was the customer. You wouldn't be focusing on that technology if your customer wasn't asking for it. And today is a great example of this with artificial intelligence. There's pretty much every company in the world is sitting here trying to figure out how they're going to take advantage of artificial intelligence. And they aren't even really thinking about whether their customers care about it or not. And so the customer transformation philosophy states that if my customers ask for artificial intelligence, then I will start to invest and look at where I can implement artificial intelligence. So it's customer first, technology last, and then everything in between is how do you get between those 2 points? How do you build a culture where that is customer centric, that is focused on those customers? What is your marketing like? How are you hiring within your organization? What are the technologies? What's the business value of that? How do you lead an organization that is customer centric? And so, again, from a terminology perspective, it's stating that the customer is the one that will transform first, and then the business has to be able to keep up with that ever evolving transformation.
Yes, and as business owners that are tuned in, this requires you to actually communicate with your customers. All right. I said it nicest though, because nowadays I love that you alluded to the fact that we focus so much on technology. And what I've actually experienced is business owners who don't communicate enough with their customers, and they spend so much money, they get so wrapped up in the being up with the technology game that they ultimately end up losing customers, or they spend too much money on AI, or whether it's Facebook ads or whatever it is, and they're not even sure the customer wants it, but they can pretend that they're busy. Now, do you consult with business owners in order to, because again, you put the book out and obviously you want to be helping people. How do you, advise business owners to keep them from getting too wrapped up into what looks cool from a technology standpoint versus, hey, this is what your customer wants, just give it to them and focus on that and stop looking to be the newest tech, stay up with the trend, so to speak.
Yeah, it goes back to what you just said, like have your customers ask for it.
Right.
Sometimes it's a very simple conversation because you'll have people who are really vested in this. I was talking with a CEO last year, and they communicated to me how they are starting to build this new chatbot system for their website. And they went on and on about how this chatbot is going to completely change their business and how much money they are investing in making this successful. And I asked the simple question, have your customers asked for this? And they took a moment, they paused, and they go, No, not really, but we believe they're going to like this.
Right.
The belief that you're going to like this is not an actual validation that they're going to accept it or like it.
Right.
So your communication point is spot on. You have to actually talk to them and ask. And this isn't assumptions. If you assume you know what your customer wants, you're
Mhm.
going to lose those customers
Right.
because at the end of the day, only they can tell you what they want. And so that was an example of let's focus on the technology, let's focus on optimization, and
Right.
then we'll figure out how we're going to sell this or deliver it to the customer.
Mhm.
And too often, when you do it backwards like that, you end up alienating your customers.
Now, in your experience, though, you've worked with some like big companies, publicly traded companies that don't get a chance to necessarily deal with every customer. They got to be making decisions on what's going to be best for their shareholders. So their shareholders almost like they're the ones that they're trying to appeal to versus the person that's actually getting the products. Is there like a balancing act, or is there something that you teach in which kind of tells people, hey, the customer, if the customer doesn't ask for it, don't give it to them, even though the shareholders may ask for it? Has there ever been a situation like that where you're dealing with someone that has that dilemma?
Yeah. You tell them stop focusing on your shareholders,
Wow. Yeah.
because this is a
I
great
hate to cut you off on
example.
that point, but we just had a guest named Steve Anderson, and he got access to Jeff Bezos' letters, all his letters, and he wrote a book about it. And I asked him something similar, and he said Jeff Bezos said the same thing. Look, if you're a shareholder and you're just looking for ROI right now, don't invest. We're gonna go right to the consumer. So
Yeah.
yes, please elaborate on that because that's a great point.
But here's the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can bring all of this back down to a basic concept.
Hmm.
One, you have to solve a customer problem, and two, without a customer, you don't have a business. So if
Hmm.
you want to talk about shareholder value, or another one that I hear a lot, and I actually just saw somebody else, a podcaster, who was talking about this, where it's money first. The focus is on generating money.
Hmm.
You can't generate money if you're not solving customer problems, right?
Right.
The customer is always first. So if I go back to that shareholder conversation,
Hmm.
if I satisfy the customer, odds are I'm going to be satisfying the shareholders.
Hmm.
Because if I satisfy the customer, that means my profits are most likely going to be going up.
Hmm.
If I spend time trying to appease the shareholders and I'm not focused on the customer, then I am attempting to make somebody happy that's not actually going to be buying the product, which is not actually going to be generating revenue, which is actually going to be detrimental to the shareholders.
Right.
So yeah, if they want something that is like an easy ROI and they expect, you have to do this and you have to do that to make me happen because I'm investing,
Yeah.
then you're not the right investor for us.
Hmm.
Because if you just sit back and wait and we satisfy the customers the way we plan on doing it,
Hmm.
you're going to be more than happy. Your ROI is going to come, but you
Hmm.
can't do it if you're trying to serve the wrong audience.
So how do you teach? And this is something you may or may not do, but do you ever encounter a situation where you're able to counsel the shareholder who gets a little feisty, who wants his ROI within a certain? Do you teach them to be a little more patient as the company is, dealing directly? Because I could see a situation where it's like, look, a business owner may not get as many customers. They're serving the customer, but it's a challenge to get the bulk orders. It's a challenge to get the more and more customers. So the shareholder gets a little antsy and they say, look, I want my money back within this month. It's not here by this deadline. Do you ever encounter a shareholder and say, look, okay, this is the company you need to be investing in if you want your ROI by this date and stuff like that? Do you ever run into situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've more than enough podcast in my book. I've clearly outlined some of these philosophies. The reality is you're going to have shareholders or investors that are primarily just focused on money.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of them really don't care about the customer. They don't.
Yeah.
Their entire initiative
Imagine they don't.
is
Right.
just to generate additional money for themselves. And they
Right.
don't care how they get there. And you can tell them as much as you want, well, then go somewhere else. But they're going to invest in what they want and they're going to pound their fist and they're going to make demands,
Yeah.
whatever. It's
I've
ultimately the
had a few of those. I grew up in Maryland, right in the political area, so I know a lot of those.
it's ultimately the responsibility of your CEO
Yeah.
or whoever is in charge
Uh-huh.
to make sure that that is well communicated.
Yes.
This organization focuses on the customer, and this organization is going to do it this way.
Hmm.
And if the CEO is unable to do that, or if the CEO begins to bow to the demands of the investors because, well, they're paying our paychecks type of thing,
Hmm.
well, no, most likely, and especially in the enterprises, it is all about larger paychecks. So if I make the shareholders, happy, I'm making 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, 80 million dollars annually.
Hmm.
I would argue, dude, you know, would you rather make 50 million, not have to deal with a shareholder and also make sure that your customers are happy? If the answer is yes, then great. That's the people we need in this world. The
Hmm.
other people, we talked about Disney. Right now, Disney could care less about their customers. Disney only cares about profit margins, making money, and making their shareholders happy. And they're
Yeah.
bowing left and right to what their shareholders are demanding. But
Yeah.
on the flip side, we are seeing businesses that are
Hmm.
going against their consumers, and they are losing massive amounts of money
Hmm.
because they're making poor decisions that are against their consumers. The consumers are speaking out, and
Right.
as a direct result, shareholders are losing money. So
Right.
I'm actually starting to see where people are recognizing, like, okay, let the business do what they do. Let's
Hmm.
make sure we're continuing to make the consumer happy, and let's try to stay out of this as much as possible. But a
Right.
lot of this that has transpired in like the last couple of years is also directly related to, again, going back to what we talked about, technology,
Yeah.
digital media, social media.
Yeah.
People are more empowered today than ever before to make an impact on your business.
Hmm.
And so if you say something or if you do something and the consumers decide they don't like it, it's going to go public. And
Hmm.
so the more that the shareholders can stay out of that
Yeah.
and you focus again on the customer first, the
Yeah.
more likely you are going to be successful.
And the thing that gets me too, because you just actually said you just made a strong point, is with technology, people are voicing their opinions, and if they don't like an experience, they're going right to one of these things right here, and they're just putting it in, and it starts to go viral. And your company is, and you as the CEO has to make an appearance on the news. I'll never forget because I grew up in Maryland. And I'll never forget the Under Armour brand, which I speak very highly about because I'm a sports guy. But there was a Winter Olympics, I think, where they had the USA girl where the thing fell apart and she's ice cold, her ass is out on the ice cold. And the next day, Kevin Plank had to make an appearance on the news defending his company and all because that's when that stuff goes viral, it is absolute suicide for your business. And one of the things that actually I remember reading in because I picked up Bob Iger's book, I believe it's A Ride of a Lifetime because again, sports guy, saw ESPN going under and Disney and all that. One of the things I remember picking up in his book was the acquisition with I think it was Pixar. Steve Jobs had it, and it almost felt like I was reading it. It almost felt like it was just them two working for the company because they were just depending on this partnership to employ thousands and thousands of people because at this point they had gotten so far away from actually serving the customer and serving the people that they initially intended to serve to where you're in a place now where it just one partnership, one acquisition is going to be the thing that feeds or a ton of families. And that's a listen, business owners, that's a difficult place to be. You lose control of your company, you lose control of everything it is you want to do. And those companies, again, were not started by the individual who was the CEO, but those companies were kind of inherited. And it's important that you get a hold of this stuff. And you are actually also a speaker and a podcast host and all that kind of stuff too. Is this what you normally educate people on? Can you kind of speak on when someone brings you in to speak, what are your keynotes about, and what do you help them do in regards to what someone gets out of your talks and your speeches and stuff?
Yeah, exactly what we're doing right now today.
Yes. Yeah.
I tackle a topic and then bring it down to the
Right.
reality of business, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy conversation, especially when you have people who say, blah, 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 shareholders, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 money.
You probably get a lot of
I
angry
say,
people though, like because you
oh
probably
yeah, you
that myth.
definitely get angry people, but then you say blah, 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 customer, you
Yeah,
know, you like argue with me,
yeah, like for,
you
because
know,
and that's the beautiful thing about business. Are the numbers show you don't even have to get into a back and forth. It is not an opinion thing in business.
right.
The numbers show. So you can't tell me again. You might like Mike. I like LeBron. We can go at it for hours and days and days. Business, this not doesn't work like that. Numbers show this. Numbers show that. Let's go. Let's do it. It's
Yeah.
objective.
Yeah. Mike is better. But besides that,
Uh-oh.
yeah, Jordan by far
The thing
here.
is, I'm glad you said that because my nephew's 13 and he's gonna come at me with some Stephen Curry, and then the young generation gonna come at me with Wembanyama. So I've learned, as much as I'd love to say LeBron, somebody like you will pull out all the LeBron flops, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't even
Well,
because I'm a
I'm out here in Laker Town, so I was all Kobe until
yeah.
then LeBron comes, and then it's just like I don't even want to watch the team.
Yeah, the thing I grew up an Iverson fan, and I always blamed you guys for taking his one chance at a championship away. But
And Iverson is
and, uh,
strong though, right?
yeah,
Like so, yeah. Anyway, off topic.
yeah, good.
What's interesting again is I usually come up with these really bold, unarguable statistics,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, 100% of all businesses that are successful have customers. It's like, name a company that doesn't have a customer, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you get them in the right state, like Tony, you get them in the right state of mind. So
yeah.
I'm gonna put you
So
there and then go there, right?
yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's plenty of companies, there's plenty of startups that don't have any customers. They're trying to figure it out, but ultimately that's what you're trying to do. You have to sell to a customer to generate money. You can't just like all of a sudden create a business and it's like, oh, look at that, I'm making money.
Yes.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I mean, even blockchain, there's some argument there that, if I'm just setting up, on mining for, crypto, that I'm self-making my money, but there's an expense to that. And, technically you would argue you're your own customer.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a business without customers. And so, if you want to argue that you have a higher priority, then you're wrong. I mean, that's really all it boils down to. And it's amazing when I talk, especially with CEOs or executive leaders who say things like, well, I just don't have the time. I'm busy running a business. I've got all of these meetings. I've got all these things going on. And I go, there are no higher priorities for you.
Right.
Your customer is your highest priority. So, I'm a CEO of my own business. I consult with a lot of CEOs, and same thing. I say, if you were to pick and choose today, like go to this meeting with a team member or a team, or sell this product guaranteed today to this customer, which meeting do you take? They all say, well, the customer, it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So you prioritize your customer over other things.
Right.
And yet we tend to inflate our egos to the point where we're like, no, I'm just too busy for that. I've got people who are responsible for that. Yeah. I am sorry. Once again, there is no other priority in your business other than your customer, no matter what you want to argue, because if you lost out of your customers tomorrow, you would be out of business.
Right.
And so if your goal is to make sure your customers are happy, make sure your shareholders are happy, make sure that there's money in the bank, make sure that you're a sustainable business, make sure that you don't have any bad press going out in the news cycle that goes viral. Like if all of those things are your priorities, they all still start with making sure your customer is happy.
Right. And this is another very important point to mention, and I do want to be very respectful of your time. So I want to make sure you mention this, or we mention, or it gets mentioned on the show, is the fact that for you to keep going at this business, it's a lifetime job. You got to genuinely care about your customers, guys. You got to genuinely, I can't say it any other way. the facts remain. You can distract yourself with all the trimmings, a nice logo, the fancy slogan, fancy website. You got to genuinely believe you have something in your product line, in your arsenal, that you care about giving it to a person. And again, speaking of Under Armour, that's one of the things that really made me want to, research and learn a lot from this company. Is I heard him say one time, there's no fundamental truth or nothing better than somebody taking money out of their wallet right there, paying you on the spot because you have something they want. That's business. I don't care what technology is there. I mean, we spoke about technology. We spoke about kind of leveraging things and making things more succinct. But the fundamental truth to business, whether you're talking storytelling or sales, is that element of someone taking money out of their pocket, giving it to you because you have something that they want and you have a solution to their problem. That's the realest part about business. And we get distracted by that all the time with social media, with our likes, and with all the trimmings that come along with being in business, so to speak. So, all that being said, I do want to be, like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what's next, what you got coming down the pipeline, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I got my hands in a lot of things. Busy, busy, busy. Right now I'm working on a new mobile video game. So that's gonna hit the markets
I don't know if I've
in
ever heard. Have I heard mobile video? Oh no, I've been out of the video game business for a while. But anyway, go ahead. Go
well,
ahead.
mobile games, whether we call it
Yeah,
mobile video games, just mobile games.
yeah.
So we'll be on the App Store
Uh-huh.
hopefully later this year. Um, starting businesses, growing new businesses, working in technology, helping out this company called Poly API,
Mm-hmm.
which is an API integrations platform leveraging AI to help you build applications faster.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of things going, and as always, doing podcasting and webinars and public speaking and writing, and yeah, stay busy. That's the
Yeah,
goal.
you got to stay busy. It is important. And what is the best way if people want to reach out and get in touch with you and work with you in any kind of way?
Yeah, best way is visit my website. You can find me at chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And
Mm-hmm.
there you can find my social media. You can find my podcast. You can find all of my blogs. You can find ways to reach out and get in touch with
Quite a
me.
few of those today. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
read. Yeah,
whatever you need, it's right there all on the website.
all in one stop shop, one hub. What's the name of your podcast?
Chris Hood Show.
Chris
So
Hood.
yeah,
Yeah. It's as long as you Google Chris Hood, hopefully you can spell that. You guys will be fine, but it will be included in the show notes as well. So, Chris, final thing I do with all my guests is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are young boy, you're selling popcorn, you're in the movies. Pretend that young guy has come into the Zoom room. Just give him some words of encouragement, talk to him a little bit, and we'll officially close.
yeah. If I was to go back in time, I would tell myself to buy more .coms.
Yeah. Sir. Yes, sir. I can't remember at the top of my head, but we did have a guest that had spoke about that, about I think it was their brother, somebody like that, that bought a bunch of .coms and he was like living well. So yes,
Yeah.
great advice, great advice, great advice. And if you're listening now, whatever the .com may be for you, it's going to take you to focus a little bit. So, with is there anything else you want to share? My bad. I
No,
usually cut
just
people off on that, by the way, but go ahead. My bad.
yeah, no, no, no. Stay hungry. Go do something fun. Follow your passions. Actually do something other than what you're already doing.
Yes.
Add to your collection. So if you're working in fast food, go work in fast food, love it, and write a book.
Yeah.
Or go work in fast food and start your own website.
Mhm.
Start your own podcast. Like, go do something else and contribute to the wealth of experiences that you can provide.
1000%. Just do something. That is a very, very strong piece of advice for a lot of listeners as well. All right. All that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.